here we go on a Friday. Welcome into another weekend, everybody. You made it through the end of January. Congratulations. 2025 is 1 month old, and we are episode 51, knee deep into this Gem City Sports podcast. Welcome in. We're so glad you're with us. Hopefully you enjoyed last night's episode. Talked a lot of high school basketball. In case you missed that, Tom Koval joined us with Jonathan Williams, so make sure to check that out over on our YouTube, our Facebook, our X, and all our other podcast platforms. Tonight, we're talking NFL. Special episode for you tonight because we're doing another snake draft. Later on in the episode, we are going to snake draft with the four of us, our MVP, Offense and Defensive Player of the Year, and Coach of the Year, meaning none of us can pick the same player or coach for each award category. So we're giving out the NFL honors before the NFL honors happen next week. Plus, before we get to that, we're talking Bills. Where do they go from here? And if they're ever going to beat Kansas City with the current rendition of the team they have. Before we get to our episode, though, of course, we are always brought to you by Rebish Investments, keeping financial guidance simple. If you want more info, just head over to their website, www.rebishinvestments.com, or you can simply do what the pros do, and that's give them a call during normal business hours, 814-734-3433. Again, 814-734-3433. The gents are all in studio tonight, or at least live from their homes. Jonathan Williams, Nick Artman, Coach Bradford. The countdown is on for Mr. Williams to get back into warm weather. And for the others here on screen, we're just stuck in the cold and the wind. Aren't you lucky, Mr. Williams?
Yeah, man, it's coming down the pipe, man. It's exciting. It's exciting times around here. You know, got the whole house packed up. So just ready to go, man.
You know, gents, last night, in case you missed our episode, Jonathan was complaining, I will say, about how we could have some special episodes in the works. So I told him we need to get down to Myrtle Beach and film an episode at some point.
Listen, I'm in for that. Any chance to go south, I'm there.
There we go. We might have to arrange like a pregame show or something like that.
I like it.
So we shall see how tonight goes. It's going to be an exciting episode as we get started and roll along. But as we've been talking about all week, and we talked on the Monday episode with Flagship City Sports Talk, the fallout from Bills and Chiefs. And now the big question is where do the Bills go from here? Brandon Beane, the general manager, speaking yesterday, as did head coach Sean McDermott. And really, you get the feeling from the comments of Beane and McDermott that not a lot's going to change between now and when the team hits the field in September. And I want to start the conversation with this. And I'll make what I think was a similar statement that I made on Monday's show, but I'll reformat it a little bit because I want to take this posture. We were debating on Monday whether or not Sean McDermott was the guy to get Buffalo over the hump and if they would ever win an AFC championship game with him as head coach. And one of the things that I had said as an overreaction, not the one that drew a lot of ire from our other co-host, God, we love you, Paul, was that, you know, I said that as good of a coach as he is, I don't know if he can possibly make the right decisions in big moments. And, Coach, you haven't been on any of our podcasts since then. The one thing that I felt like that was apparent in the game, and has been apparent in the 4 times they've played in the playoffs, is that they're very similar in talent. They're very similar in how they get to where they get to. But Kansas City just has the notion and has the knowledge to make the big plays when it matters. What did you make of the AFC Championship game and why you thought the Bills couldn't get over the hump in their 4th attempt?
Well, I think it's an interesting perspective, and I'll give you 2 words, aggressive and belief. So I think the Chiefs are much more aggressive offensively and defensively, and I think they believe. So I'm watching the game, and I'm watching 3rd and short, 4th and short, and I'm watching Kansas City be aggressive and call sprint right, option, nobody on the edge, over and over again. And what is your answer? And this is not a new play for Kansas City. This is the play they need on 4th down. And we have no edge. We have no pressure. So aggressive. Then I'm watching opposite, Buffalo running the same conservative tush-push, whatever you want to call it, worst play in football, I think. Take your best player, Cook, off of the, field. You got an extra lineman in, get an empty and run quarterback power draw, do something. So is that Sean McDermott or is that Joe Brady? But I think way too conservative when you had to be aggressive, way too aggressive when you had to be conservative. And Kansas City, and Jonathan knows that winning is a habit, losing is a habit. And those are tough things to break. They're 16-0 in 1-score games, guys. I mean, 16-0. Buffalo's 0-4 against them. I mean, I don't know if those are anomalies or what, but those are staggering statistics.
Yeah, for me, go ahead, Jonathan, because I honked on Monday. You go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you've been in those moments, and to your point, 16-0 in 1-score games, you don't panic. Yeah. Like, you're comfortable there. Where like this is a big moment for Buffalo, and this is our chance to finally get over the hump and do what we haven't done before. And it's like it's just another Sunday for the Chiefs. They've done this week in, week out, pretty much every week of the regular season. For me, though, it was, and you mentioned it the week before in the lead up to the game, Coach. Spagnuolo is ridiculous, and games. Yeah, he's an absolute wizard when it comes to defensive play calling. And everybody knows the play that I'm going to go to, the fourth down play at the end of the game, showing pressure from one place, bringing a corner blitz off the edge, I sent you guys the text message, and I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but it was to the effect of they had been showing a similar look all game long and running a different pressure out of it, showing the same look over and over and over and over again, and kind of burning it into Buffalo's heads that, okay, when they come out in this, they're going to do this. And then to flip it with the game on the line, 4th and 5, biggest play of the game for your defense, and to flip it and bring pressure, bring a corner and a corner and safety blitz or corner and linebacker. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. Spags, to your point, aggressive play calling, completely wrecked that offense at the end of the game. And it's the reason why Kansas City is still playing next week.
Yeah, I pulled up that text. It was actually an X post by Tyler Dunn at Ty Dunn. This is the X post right here. Chatted with Bills guard Osiris Torrance about the decisive 4th and 5 play. All games, DC Steve Spagnuolo showed this particular pressure and backed off. Typically sent heat when the Chiefs weren't showing it pre-snap, and that's why the Bills slid their protection to the left. And then, of course, on that play, Spag sends them. So, yeah, just playing mind games. You know what? I said the same thing you did. If you watch the last 2 minutes of that game, if you could do like the all 22 and spin it to the Chiefs side of the ball, everybody's just like this. All right, we know what's going to happen. This is fun. But then you switch over to the Bills side, and there's nerves, right? You can see the tension, you can see the angst. Just look at McDermott's face on that last drive, And I think that's the difference between these two teams right now is the confidence that as long as Mahomes has 20 seconds left in the game, they're going to win that game.
Better shot.
Well, and I texted that to you guys when the game was with a minute and a half left to go. But I mean, forget the last drive. I think you look back to the first drive of the game, right? Kansas City wins the toss, they defer, and the drive that started the game for the Bills was pointless. 3 passes, not really any successful routes. Josh Allen and a tizzy really should have had 2 interceptions in the first 3 plays. Yeah. But what I really think is the difference, because if you take a 360-degree view of this, Buffalo doesn't do this against any other team. They have been the team to make the small adjustments, the big plays when it matters, even against Baltimore and Lamar Jackson when they started getting run over in the second half. What did they do? They adjusted. They started running the football. Their defense bowed their neck when it mattered the most. And on the 2-point play, what could the Ravens do? Run the ball because Buffalo crowded the box. But when you look at, and I brought this up on Monday, for me, this game between Buffalo and Kansas City has now become a game of layers. And you guys all make great points about Steve Spagnuolo probably in practice on Monday had a play designed and ready to go for a 4th down play late in the game that would win you the game. But if you're Buffalo to be an elite team, which is where Kansas City is right now, I think we can all agree, you have to also in practice instill something where we have a 4th down play, but let's call an audible in the case that Kansas City brings a blitz. You have to be ready for that. You have to know that Spagnuolo's going to probably bring something different. And I think in that moment, out of the 2-minute warning on 4th down, the second Josh Allen sees any potential chance of a blitz, you have to be able to check out of that. And I understand it's difficult, and I understand things get disguised, but that to me is the only way that you're going to beat Kansas City, is to have that belief and that assumption, as Wayne pointed out earlier, the word belief, that they are going to do something that's planned and something you're not expecting. So you then have to counter that. And they're not doing that right now. And as good of a coach as McDermott is, he may be a top 5 coach in football. I said that on Monday. But he has not been able to, against Kansas City, figure out that final layer, and I just don't think they're going to win until that happens.
It's like we always talk about. It's the chess match. And Coach, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the big part of being a play caller, either offensively or defensively, is being able to anticipate what the other team is going to do before they do it, so that you can call the perfect play to counter what it is that you already anticipate them doing. You practically have to be able to see into the future based off of trends, based off of your film study, based off of tendency and what they typically do in certain situations. And if you have the knowledge of Spags being an aggressive play caller in certain situations and in certain moments in the game, you have to have something. You have to be prepared for him to come out and do that. You have to trust it. If you've seen it in film, if you have the analytics, if you know that there's a potential for him to blitz on an important down or a certain down in distance or under 2 minutes on important plays, if you know that there are certain tendencies there, you have to trust what you know and trust what you see and go with your gut and have something different for it. A lot of it is just being able to anticipate what's going to happen before it happens, and they've been good at doing that against every other team except the Chiefs.
Yeah, and you put it on a platter for them by the condensed split. I mean, you set it up for them. I mean, it was
probably a safety blitz.
It was probably a check. Yeah, so they're bringing the safety through the B gap, but with a condensed split, those guys are smart enough. So, I mean, you set up, an edge corner blitz to a nub side, basically. The tackle's never going to kick out to him, and you're empty, so you've got a 5-man scat protection. So don't be an empty. Do something where, if you have the back and you can slide and block the edge with the back, but you're an empty, you're in 5-man protection. That ball's got to go now. Now, maybe 4th and 2, you can, there's a lot of things there to me. And all those 4th down plays, I mean, you weren't having any success with the quarterback sneak. Okay, get an empty and run quarterback counter. Run the bubble and get him out of the box. Make it clean for him, or run zone read with Cook. I mean, the guy was having a great day, and think players not plays. Your best players not in the game on the most critical downs.
Let me throw this last angle at you guys, and Nick, if you want to go ahead after this, feel free. I just want to throw this at you too. I've harped on a lot, and we have on this show, about I think Sean McDermott still has 13 seconds in his head. And this actually just popped in my brain as you were talking, Wayne and Jonathan. We talk about all the different things Buffalo could have done in that situation, to me, which is the microcosm of how when they play Kansas City. Could they have checked? Yes. Should they have checked? Yes. Could you have, if you're Allen, just anticipate the blitz and throw the wheel around to Shakir and he's probably still running? Yes. But the one thing that we didn't talk about that they could have done was call a timeout. They had 3 timeouts. They were coming out of the 2-minute warning. But Sean McDermott in his head, I'm guessing, looked at that clock and said, if we don't get it, we have to have all our timeouts to stop Kansas City because I don't think we can prevent them from getting a first down. And it's that mentality, I think, as well, that with Sean McDermott enters his head when he's going up against Andy Reid, that is just that mental blockade. That's the difference from them going from here to here. And I don't know if with him it's ever going to change.
No, I think
it's being defensive.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the difference between a guy like Andy Reid and a guy like Sean McDermott is you have Reid, who is just a mastermind. Like, he is so comfortable in his system, in his players, in his team. And I think that comes from I had the numbers on Monday. I forget them now. I mean, Reed's been coaching for 20-some years. He's been a head coach, right? He understands situational football at every level. He's been a student of the game for so long. And McDermott's only been a head coach for like 7, right? And I think that's what you see in this game is you just see that level of experience that McDermott doesn't know what to do in those situations all the time. And he's kind of like Tomlin where he's terrible at game management and sometimes he does well. And that's just not his strength. He needs to rely on maybe somebody else to do that, a la my opinion on Mike Tomlin as well. But, I think that's when this game comes down to literal inches, whether you can see them or not, then it goes to a guy like Andy Reid who just has that experience, has that comfort, and has that calmness to him in his coaching.
Coach, if you had to in the offseason, and I don't know if it is a personnel move that's going to get them over the hump, is there one thing that Buffalo is going to have to do between now and September to finally have it be the season that they beat the Chiefs in the playoffs? Or is it possible?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things. Number one, I look at the roster, and I look at Philadelphia, Kansas City. I don't see a dominant interior lineman. I don't see Chris Jones. I don't see Jordan Davis. I don't see the other guy, Jalen Carter. So I don't see a dominant guy inside. And your best player, Ed Oliver, doesn't play very well. A couple mistakes that really cost him on the fumble, etc. Close, couple calls. But I don't see that dominant interior guy, right? You got Matabike, for years the Steelers have had Hayward. I mean, and Von Miller's not TJ Watt or an elite guy on the side. So then, Espinoza, Rousseau, come on guys, make a freaking play. You know what I mean? I don't think they've had anybody make a play defensively. And then offensively, I look, they don't have a great number 1 receiver, but they got a collection of guys. They got some guys there. They're young at the O-line, but do they need a more physical presence at fullback, tight end, right? So I think there's, there is a little bit personnel-wise there. But in its crunch time, you better be able to have an interior guy that can stop the run. I don't think they have a dominant interior guy.
Yep. And those are the little things probably that keeps you from winning games. It's just, again, Bo's question, is it personnel or is it the mental game? And we're going to see. I'm sure these 2 teams, I said this on Monday, are going to probably be back in the AFC Championship next year, maybe save for Baltimore if they can get over the hump of one of these 2 teams. But for Buffalo, 4 straight years in running, and we hate to keep talking about it, but it's just the question of how does this keep happening? And they have another year to think about it as they get ready for the offseason and the draft. All right, we have a draft coming up in a minute, but before we get to that, as always, our show is sponsored by Rebich Investments, keeping financial guidance simple for several years in the Erie County area. 814-734-3433 is their number to call during normal business hours, or you can visit their website anytime at www.rebichinvestments.com. All right, it's snake draft time, gents. Tonight, before the NFL honors happen, we are going to snake draft, as we've done for Thanksgiving foods and Christmas movies, our awards for the NFL honors. We're going to do Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, MVP, and Coach of the Year. Now, a disclaimer, and the guys don't even know this yet. I'm going to open them up to a brand new world of possibilities. There have been 5 finalists named for each category. We are not beholden to pick from those 5. You are able to pick anybody that you want because, as we know, there's more that are deserving than what are just going to head to New Orleans. So we'll do the snake draft in order of which we appear on screen. So I finally get a number 1 pick. I've been the host of this show for the entire duration, and I've never gotten a number 1 pick, so I'm taking that tonight. Jonathan will pick 2nd, Nick 3rd, Wayne will pick 4th, then he'll pick 1st in the next round. We'll start tonight with what I think is probably the hardest category to pick in the Defensive Player of the Year. Last couple of years, it's been obvious, or at least it's been Myles Garrett versus TJ Watt. Take your pick. But I'm going to start with Pat Surtain as my pick from the Denver Broncos, who I think has been, to me, the most steadfast corner. 4 interceptions on the year. He also forced a fumble in the game against Cincinnati. That was a huge game for playoff implications for both teams. I think anytime you have a shutdown corner, it just makes it so much easier for your team. We saw, again, not to bring up the Buffalo-Kansas City game, but when Christian Benford goes out, you have to play the game so much differently. And Sean Payton, with his defense and Pat Surtain, has allowed them to be able to be so much different and so more dynamic with not having to have two high safeties all the time. So I'll go Pat Surtain as my defensive player of the year from the Denver Broncos. And Jonathan Williams is over to you. I know I picked your position. I'm sorry.
Yeah. There's a reason why you haven't been getting first picks, so you couldn't do that for me. But because you went with Surtain, I'm gonna go a route that most people probably won't go, but guy had 17.5 sacks this year. I'm going Trey Hendrickson from Cincinnati.
Fair. I mean, you think about it. Without him, that Bengals defense may not be able to stop a Division III team.
Yeah,
they were terrible all year. And you talk about a guy who maybe ups his trade value, and I'm sure probably makes the Bengals look and say, should we really be paying all these receivers? Yeah, Trey Hendrickson's the guy. Nick Hartman, hopefully your camera's back in focus after pounding the table. Your pick.
Well, I'm pounding my table because I'm like, that's who I would have taken 101 is Trey Hendrickson in this, because I think led the league in sacks with 17.5. 46 total tackles isn't nothing to run home about, but 6 pass deflections at the line as well. And now, mind you, I'm not a defensive player, but to get a sack, you need to pass the ball, right? And in most games, the Bengals are playing from behind. So yes, they're putting up points, but the other team is just trying to run the clock out. So when your opponents are running that fewer amount of rush play or pass plays, and Hendrickson is still able to get those types of sacks, man, I thought I would have had him if I had him at the last pick. All right, well now I gotta regroup here.
Sorry, Nick.
Oh, it's okay. That's all right. There's a couple guys still on my list that I really like. I won't save beating up on the one until I see what coach's pick is. But unfortunately, I think to go at the 3rd overall pick for the defensive player of the year, I'm going with Myles Garrett. Second in the league, 14 sacks, 47 total tackles. But the guy had a pass rush win rate of like 90 plus per PFF. I mean, he just is, again, that type of defensive, that disruption on any play he can get there. Oh, and he knows how to play the run too. There's a lot of pass rushers who just, maybe blow by the run. They don't get the run. Well, Garrett is very effective in the run game, if not as effective as he is in the pass game. So on a bad defense, a team that, didn't face many, kind of similar to the Bengals, didn't face many pass offenses, still able to come up with that amount of sacks. I think, that at least get your name in the race.
Yeah. Wayne Bradford, over to you, defensive player of the year.
Yeah, love it. All right. So 3 great picks. So I've got one probably that no one is thinking about, but since I'm the 4th pick, I think I have a great one. Jonathan Grenard, Minnesota Vikings.
I like it.
41 solo, 12 sacks, 4 forced fumbles, did a little bit of everything for that defense. So I think cumulatively had as good of a year as anyone if you look at all his stats together.
I will say this, Wayne, and not because I think you're a fan of this team, but because I thought because of how shut down he is, I am stunned you did not take Kyle Hamilton.
Yeah, I love him, but I didn't want to be a homer. And when you gave me this task, I tried to find out who was the most impactful player, right? So if you look at Minnesota winning the amount of games they did, and what Brian Flores did, Kyle Hamilton, I love him, but I think Jonathan Grenard, impact wise, with the way the Vikings played, new DC and all, I'd mark him a little bit ahead. But I love Kyle Hamilton.
I'll tell you what, too, Brian Flores and the job he did, head coaching job, may not be far off in his future either.
Should have got one this year. I don't know what they're doing.
Go ahead, Nick.
No, real quick before we jump to the next category. I'm trying to find updated odds as my internet is currently failing me. But at one point, TJ Watt was the #1 betting choice for Defensive Player of the Year. And even as a Steelers fan, I don't understand that. He fell off at the second half of the season. So all to say, kudos to you, gents, for not going that route, because I know he's a big name. He's somebody people want to drop, put in there every year. Maybe should have won it last year, but okay, get him off the board. He did not have that good of a year this year.
TJ Watt via FanDuel is actually the second best odds to win. My pick, Pat Surtain, is the top odds. Trey Hendrickson, third. Myles Garrett, fourth. Zach Bond, fifth at plus 5,000. I'll tell you what, Myles Garrett at plus 5,000 to win the thing, that's pretty darn good value. I know he won last year, but man, I would put a couple dollars on that if I were a betting man. All right, Wayne, you get to start us off with our Offensive Player of the Year selections. You're spoiled for choice. There are a lot of great ones, but you get to be the first one to pick.
All right, great. There are a lot of great ones, but I'm a horse racing fan, so anytime anybody wins the Triple Crown, right, I think that they deserve something. So I'm going to go with Ja'Marr Chase. I mean, everybody knows you're throwing it to him. To your point, Nick, they're down. Everybody knows they're throwing it. So he's got a great quarterback, and you have to have a great quarterback, but week in and week out, can anyone stop the guy? I love the way he plays. I love what he does off the field. That little story with the young kid that down in Dallas, so the kid gets it. And he's got a great relationship with his quarterback. I think they have something really special there. So Ja'Marr Chase is my vote for Offensive Player of the Year.
This guy's so talented, man. That LSU team in 2019, illegal. Erase it from national championship lore. All right, I'll get off my high horse.
Maybe they can beat Kansas City.
they could not beat Kansas. No, that is for sure. Nick Hartman, over to you.
All right, well, that was my number 2. So I get my first pick at the second. I'm good with this. I'm going Saquon Barkley. Not only the story coming from the Giants, people thought he was washed. The running back position has been devalued, but then Saquon goes to the Eagles and puts up 2,000 yards. So that easily just getting over the 2K point puts you in the running. He was averaging 125 yards a game, only fumbled twice, the 13 touchdowns. Oh, and he contributed on the receiving end with 33 receptions for 278 and 2 touchdowns as well. I mean, to put up this number of points and to put up this many rush yards when you do have the dreaded tush push taking away touchdowns. I mean, let's say the tush push was not in, let's say it was outlawed. Most of those touchdowns go to Saquon, and these numbers just skyrocket even more. So I think it's an easy pick for me with Saquon, Offensive Player of the Year.
Might be a win away in a Super Bowl from having the greatest single season in history for a running back. Great pick, Nick. Jonathan, you get the third pick.
So I was definitely going with Saquon, but this one
I'm going to taking Hendrickson.
This one I'm going to go the route of a guy that I originally wasn't going to pick to win this award. I think he's a better fit for, I think it's Comeback Player of the Year. But he's not going to win the MVP because his team didn't perform very well. But when you look at his numbers, they were off the charts. I got to go Joe Burrow. Nearly 5,000 passing yards on the season.
That's a good one.
Yeah, he's just been unreal. 43 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. You got to go Burrow.
Oh, man, that hurts. That hurts a lot.
Hey, you wanted the first pick, buddy.
Yeah, okay, all right, guilty as charged. You know what? I got a good pick. I still have one as my second on the board, and I'm going to go with a guy who I think was overshadowed a little bit because of the talent he had on his team, but mainly because the fact that he's doing what he is doing in his 30s at a position that has been significantly devalued over the course of the last few years. Could have been a Dallas Cowboy. They didn't want him. He could have played for Pittsburgh. They decided Najee Harris was better. Derrick Henry, to me, was the most consistent Baltimore Raven not named Lamar Jackson all season long, and that's with respect to the defense. I think what Saquon Barkley is in speed and finesse, Derrick Henry is in downhill running. And to me, the moment that he won this award, and I know it's a regular season award, but the moment he cemented it was start of the second half or late first half or whenever it was when Baltimore just runs a 15-play drive with all runs down the field. And it was a couple in there with Lamar, but it was Derrick Henry straight downhill in your face. And it's one of those things where with Saquon, he's so talented, but you kind of have to draw some things up to get him the ball in space. Derrick Henry, you can run inside power, and the guy's going to beat you all day long. You know what's coming, and you can't stop it. And I think that's the definition of a guy who is scary to play against. So I'm going to go with Derrick Henry for Offensive Player of the Year. But all great picks, and I think realistically anybody on this list could certainly win the award. All right, now we go to Coach of the Year, which, again, spoiled for choice for so many of these coaches. And realistically, I mean, look, if it was a playoff award, Andy Reid would win this trophy every year, but it is not. So by via of the first pick, and I know the guy who's picking last is going to be really upset that I picked this guy because it would probably be his. I don't see how you cannot go with a guy who took an average roster, a rookie quarterback who was not the number one pick, in a really tough division to the NFC Championship game, and Dan Quinn would be my Coach of the Year from the Washington Commanders. This is a defensive coach who historically has not had great offensive talent, and this year he's got one good wide receiver and a rookie quarterback, and they put up their best points per game average in team history, I believe. And so for me, you look at the Commanders and it's like, okay, maybe they have a sophomore slump, but how could they? Where do they go up from here? The defense will get better. The offense will get more pieces. Jaden Daniels isn't going to be in year 2 with Cliff Kingsbury because no one's going to take him. What a job by Dan Quinn and this Commander team. And also, to a franchise who was dormant. Dan Snyder was the worst owner in sports. They turned it around in one season. Congrats to them. They're going to be back for years to come. And Dan Quinn's my Coach of the Year. So I'll start off with Dan Quinn and go over to Jonathan Williams for his Coach of the Year.
We're just going to keep burning each other over and over.
I guess we are. I guess we are.
All right. Okay, I got you. Yeah, no, I was definitely going Dan Quinn as well, and for all of the reasons that you just said. My number 2, it was a bit of a toss-up, but I lean towards Dan Campbell for what he was able to do with that Lions roster, and knowing their defense was pretty much decimated for most of the season. A lot of injuries on that side of the ball, and then you lose one half of your 1-2 punch at running back for a couple of games, and still to put together the regular season that they did and win the amount of games that they did. I'll go Dan Campbell.
Yeah, I mean, they had more players on IR than every other team in the league combined. It was ridiculous, and they still almost made the NFC Championship game. All right, Nick, what do you got?
So I think for mine, and I was stuck between Dan Campbell and this coach. I'm going with Kevin O'Connell from the Vikings. I think this was a season that people didn't expect anything from the Vikings. They draft J.J. McCarthy, and you're thinking, okay, they're going to have a rookie quarterback. He gets injured. Oh, well, you got to go to Sam Darnold. Oh, Sam Darnold's not a great quarterback. He sees ghosts in the pocket. He's been kind of a bust, first overall pick or first-round pick. Hasn't done much with it. What's he going to do? Well, he turns around, and the Minnesota Vikings finish 14-3, second in the NFC North, which is crazy that you go 14-3 and you don't win your own division. So I just think the way he's able to motivate his team to build up a quarterback. I mean, he is, the name Coach Whisperer goes around all the time. He truly is, man. I mean, I don't think it matters who's in at quarterback. And I think you saw that even with, as players kind of leave his scheme, they kind of come back to earth, a la Kirk Cousins this year. So I just think he's a guy that people want to play for. The leadership believes in him. He just got the bag with a new contract extension. And I'm just, I didn't even talk about the scheme, the way he plays out the offensive scheme to just hit you in your weakness. The guy's just a great coach.
And a quarterback situation who wasn't expecting this year. Good pick, 100%. Nick. When you get to go for your Coach of the Year.
Yeah, great. All 3 great picks. So mine comes down to the AFC West. And there's 2 guys in there I think you could talk about outside of Andy Reid. But just like you guys went with Dan Quinn with a rookie quarterback, how can you not go with Sean Payton with a rookie quarterback, a Bo Nix, making it to the playoffs, having a great defense. So I'm down to Jim Harbaugh and Sean Payton. If Harbaugh wins the Texans game, I'd probably go with him. But, I think he had a little better roster, definitely at the quarterback position. So to come in and do what you did with Bo Nix, develop him and get to the playoffs, I think I'll go with Sean Payton.
Feels like this Coach of the Year category is more loaded this season than years past. Probably 7-8 guys who could have won the award. Heck, Mike Tomlin was the front runner through 13 weeks of the season. So congratulations to all those guys for being nominated. Then there are a lot of great coaches around. You got to be.
Can we take a time out for a second and talk about the AFC West? Okay, so first off, they have four of the best. Well, the Raiders kind of fell off, but they have some of the best quarterbacks in the league in that division, right? Now you have four of potentially the best coaches in the NFL in that division. Good God! Like, now you got Pete Carroll going to Vegas. That division is a nightmare. I mean, you think the NFC North is bad? AFC West is not far behind them. Sorry, that's all.
No, I think
and Durant.
Right.
I'm a Pete Carroll fan. I'm excited to have him back in the league.
He's such a perfect fit too for the Raiders, man. He's going to come in there and wreak havoc, and it's going to be a fun division. Glad that the teams we cover are not a part of it because, man, that's a viper pit that you don't want to get into. Final category, MVP. We saved the best for last, and Wayne gets to start things off to end things on this Friday evening. Wayne, your 2024 NFL MVP.
Yeah, look at the quarterbacks around the league, and then look at the guy who's had the best playoff run, and he's going to be Rookie of the Year. But you go from 14 wins to 13 wins. You have a franchise, like you said, mired in mediocrity for years. I'm going with Jaden Daniels. That's a 9-game swing. Tell me someone else who has made the impact that he's made on his team. So I'm going Jaden Daniels. He's your Rookie of the Year. But, if you're talking about the most valuable player to a franchise, I don't think it's close.
Great pick. Nick?
I like it. That would be crazy, just being even a rookie. Like, I think he's a lock for Offensive Rookie of the Year, let's be honest. He may be a lock for Offensive Player of the Year. Man, overcoming MVP I think would be crazy. All right. I'm not going to do what I want to do and what I think is actually going to happen because the two guys following me will just get mad at me. So I'll go ahead and just make a single MVP pick because I do believe there will be two MVPs called on the night of the NFL Honors, co-MVPs, and there's precedence for it. It happened in 2003 with Peyton Manning and Steve McNair, and it happened in 97 with Brett Favre and Barry Sanders. So, but I won't do that to you guys because I don't want to throw off your picks, although I really want to after IP's claims on Monday. So I'm gonna go with Lamar, and Lamar just really stepped it up this year to me personally. He's a guy I've obviously seen a lot being an AFC North fan and watching a lot of Ravens games if I'm not watching Steeler games. Lamar was always the running back who knew how to throw the ball a little bit. But I think this year he has shed that running back who can throw the ball and has truly become a dual threat quarterback. He has really smartened up as a passer. He's become accurate. He's not looking to run first, which you saw a lot his first couple years in the league. Now he's running through his progressions, and then if he needs to run or if it's a designed run, he'll go ahead and go for it. Jackson led the league with 8.8 yards per pass attempt and averaged 6.6 yards per carry as a runner. And he just was a guy you had to watch on every single play. You saw that in the Steelers game where he, like Lamar, you talk about playing mind games, Spags playing mind games. Lamar is just reading defenses at this point. Run pass option to Derrick Henry. If it looks like they're going to push Henry's way, Lamar's taking it off the other way. Or he's going to play action it to Mark Andrews or pick a receiver. The guy just was in another level this year, and he carried that team a long way, a lot further than I thought they were going to go. So I'll get off my soapbox for Lamar Jackson here.
When we get to the end, after Jonathan and I pick, we'll ask Nick who he thinks is going to be co-MVPs because I don't want him to give Jonathan any ideas because I'm one pick away from getting to have the actual MVP here that's going to be coming up. But Jonathan's going to take it, so it's fine. It's been the way things have been going tonight. Jonathan Williams, you get the pick now for your 2024 NFL MVP. Go ahead, put me out of my misery.
I'm not actually going to do that. My one A was going to be Lamar Jackson. That's who I think should win it. That's who I believe will win it. But I'm kind of going off the wall for this one. It's a guy that we haven't talked very much about, but if we're talking going along the lines of Coach Bradford, most valuable player to your team and who has been a more valuable asset to their team, can we look at Baker Mayfield throwing for 41 touchdowns and winning the NFC South?
I love it.
Yeah, I'm going Baker Mayfield, man. Losing Chris Godwin halfway through the season, a slew of injuries to your wide receiver core and you still throw for 40 plus touchdowns, lead that team to 9 or 10 wins, I believe. It's the NFC South championship. Baker Mayfield balled this year, and he gets my MVP pick.
That's a great pick. And, it's funny, too, because so many players have different situations that they go to, and it ends up better. And I would say, really, for Baker, like, you can tell he feels at home, right? And he's valuable of the team that has him. He's not a quarterback on a $60 million contract. It's a heck of a pick. It's a great pick. And the guy's probably going to win the NFC South year in, year out because Atlanta can't figure it out. And the other two teams are cellar dwellers at the moment. Good. I finally get my pick. I get the guy that I had all along. And I know everyone's expecting me to go one direction with this, but I don't think it's any more obvious who the MVP is. It's Saquon Barkley. How in the world can you not look? I know. I know. How in the world can you look at this Eagles team? And I understand 2 years ago they were a Super Bowl squad. But Jalen Hurts has had a down year, really struggled, under 3,000 passing yards. His touchdown to interception ratio was just over 3-1. It wasn't great. Saquon Barkley goes over 2,000 yards in the regular season, and then you look at what he did in the playoffs. And I understand it's a regular season award. But if we're talking value to your team, he is the one player in the National Football League that I think with beyond a shadow of a doubt I think like crazy outlandish situations, and I think if it's 3rd and 20 as an offensive team, or if it's 4th and 1 as a defense, who's the one guy who you're giving the ball to or you're having storm the gap to make that final stop, or, in a passing situation, make that interception? And I'm pretty sure the Eagles could give the ball to Saquon Barkley every play in the Super Bowl and feel like they were going to win the football game. I think the story of him going from New York to in division, we saw the Hard Knocks with, Joe Shane and the Maras saying, I really hope he doesn't go to Philadelphia, and just the story of that. And for Saquon to be able to come back to the school, to the state where he played his college ball in, I know, Jonathan, I'm sorry. And now have a chance to win the Super Bowl and really have the greatest season ever by a running back. If there is a year to award an MVP to a non-quarterback, it would be this year. And while I agree with you guys, I think it's going to probably go to Lamar or Josh Allen, and they're both deserving. Man, you just don't see seasons like that from a running back, especially with a position that has been degraded and devalued over the course of the last few years. So Saquon would be my pick. He's already got 400-plus rushing yards in the playoffs. I heard a stat, I believe I heard on the Rich Eisen show. He is the only player in NFL playoff history to have 3 or more touchdowns of 60 yards or more of any position. Running back, wide receiver, quarterback, defense. It's crazy. And so I would pick Saquon as my MVP. And we lead out Josh Allen. But the irony in that, we smack Bills fans with another 2x4 after starting the show with them. But the NFL honors will be exciting. And I think, what a competitive season in football this year. And really, I think for the first time in a while, all these categories, maybe outside of Jaden Daniels, are really competitive.
See, I should have took my co-MVP because Allen was who I had as the other co-MVP. So I would have been safe to take both. I just think both of them, you're split down the middle. Personally, I think it should be Burrow, but I just think they didn't win enough games for him to be considered in that area. Yeah. But I think I think there's a very good chance it comes co-MVP between Lamar and Allen.
Yeah. There's 2 other names too. It's surprising. Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
Fantastic year too. But I think statistically, though, very good. And then Sam Darnold. I mean, if you're talking, Kevin O'Connell, Sam Darnold, 14 wins or whatever. I mean, you could make the same argument. He's probably a comeback player. I don't even know what that entails.
Yeah.
But didn't have a great playoff game. But boy, the guy was brilliant in the regular season.
I think they should add a category, and I'm serious in this, something like biggest career revival. Because I feel like every year there are a handful of players that have this season where you go from being a nobody to all of a sudden you're going to stand out player again. Sam Darnold's going to get paid. And to your point, Wayne, I mean, that guy took what was expected to be a last place team, turned them into a 14-win team. You can make the argument, if not for the home away rules, but division winners, they'd be in the NFC Championship game hosting Philadelphia.
Right.
So, again, that really good picks as well. So those are our picks. Let us know in the comments who your picks are for your NFL honors as we get ready for the Super Bowl coming up next week. We're going to be back next week, including Monday, 9 a.m. for Flagship City Sports Talk. We're going to talk some Super Bowl high school stuff as always, and we'll get into some more exciting topics as well. Then next Thursday, Super Bowl predictions, and it is going to be the farewell episode for Mr. Jonathan Williams. So see if we can get some confetti streamers in there or something like that. We would wear South Carolina Ravens shirts, but I don't know if they have those screen printed yet. So we'll see what we can do.
I'll check. I'll check.
I'll wear my Ravens gear. I'm ready.
That's close enough. Wayne can just bring all of his jerseys that he wore during the playoff run. He's got enough of them. Baltimore win them. He's got a bunch of games in the last couple of years. But anyway, can't wait to be with you all next week. Again, thanks so much for being a part of our show and our network. We love you all. We thank you for being with us day in and day out. That's it for episode 51. Enjoy your weekend. Last weekend free of football until the Super Bowl coming up next week.